Imagine discovering that a habit you repeat almost every week in your own kitchen, something that feels responsible, practical, even intelligent, might quietly be creating the conditions for one of the most dangerous cancers in the human body. Not because you are careless, not because you are eating junk food every day, but because you are trying to avoid waste. Leftovers. Most people feel proud of saving food. You cook dinner, store what remains in the refrigerator, and reheat it the next day. It seems harmless. In fact, it seems like the sensible thing to do, but there is a hidden detail in this routine that very few people ever talk about. Certain foods change chemically the second time heat touches them, not visually, not in a way your senses can detect, but deep within their molecular structure. And those chemical changes can place extraordinary stress on one small organ that works silently inside your body every single day. Your pancreas. The pancreas is one of the most delicate organs in the digestive system. It produces the enzymes that break down food. It releases insulin to control blood sugar. It works constantly and quietly, asking for almost nothing in return. Yet it is also one of the organs least capable of tolerating chronic inflammation or repeated chemical stress. When something damages the pancreas, it rarely sends a warning signal. No sharp pain. No swelling you can feel. No clear alarm. Damage accumulates quietly for months or years before symptoms appear, and by the time many people realize something is wrong, the disease has often advanced far beyond the point where simple treatments can help. Pancreatic cancer is one of the most aggressive forms of cancer known in modern medicine. The 5-year survival rate remains among the lowest of any major cancer. That is why understanding the small everyday habits that affect this organ is so important. I'm Dr. Michael Kent, and over the years I have spoken with many patients who ask the same heartbreaking question after their diagnosis. Why didn't anyone tell me earlier? Today I want to talk about something extremely simple that can reduce unnecessary stress on your pancreas. Not a miracle cure, not a complicated diet, just awareness about 5 common foods that become significantly more problematic when they are reheated incorrectly. The important detail is not the food itself. It is what happens to that food after it sits in the refrigerator and is heated again. Because during that process, certain oils oxidize, bacteria can produce heat-resistant toxins, and natural compounds inside vegetables can transform into chemicals that the body struggles to neutralize. These changes may seem small in a single meal, but repeated week after week, year after year, they can create the kind of chronic inflammation that places constant pressure on pancreatic cells. And the most surprising part is this. At least 3 of these foods are probably sitting in your refrigerator right now. Let's begin with the one that shocks most people first, the reheated fried foods that so many households enjoy the next day. Think about the last time you ordered fried chicken or made crispy fries at home. The meal was great, but there were leftovers. Instead of throwing them away, you wrapped them carefully and placed them in the refrigerator. The next day, you pulled them out and reheated them in a pan with a little oil or placed them in the microwave. It seems harmless, but something important happens to cooking oils after they are heated once. Many of the most commonly used oils, sunflower oil, corn oil, soybean oil, contain high levels of polyunsaturated fats. These fats are extremely sensitive to heat. When they are exposed to high temperatures during frying, their molecular structure begins to break down. The process is called lipid oxidation. During oxidation, unstable molecules called free radicals form. These molecules react aggressively with nearby cells and tissues. When fried food cools and is stored, these damaged fats remain inside the food. When the same food is reheated again, especially in additional oil, the oxidative damage increases dramatically. At that point, compounds known as aldehydes begin to form in higher concentrations. Aldehydes are reactive molecules that researchers have associated with inflammation and cellular damage in the body. Once consumed, they enter the bloodstream and can interact with tissues throughout the digestive system. Your pancreas becomes heavily involved in managing this stress because it plays a role in both digestion and metabolic regulation. Repeated exposure to oxidized fats can stimulate inflammatory responses that force pancreatic cells to work under constant biochemical pressure. Imagine trying to perform delicate work while smoke fills the room around you. That is similar to what chronic inflammation does to sensitive organs like the pancreas. It doesn't cause instant failure, but it creates an environment where cells are constantly repairing damage. Over time, that repeated repair process increases the chance that something goes wrong at the cellular level. Many people assume that reheating fried food simply affects taste or texture, but from a biochemical standpoint, Reheating oil-rich foods multiple times increases the presence of oxidation products that the body must process. The solution is surprisingly simple. If you have leftover fried food, avoid reheating it in additional oil. Use dry heat instead. An oven or air fryer can restore texture without introducing more oxidized fats. Even better, cook only the portion you plan to eat that day whenever possible. Small adjustments like this reduce the number of oxidized compounds your body has to deal with. And when those adjustments become routine, they can significantly lower the chronic metabolic stress placed on organs like the pancreas. Now, the second food on this list surprises many people even more because it is something widely considered one of the healthiest foods you can eat. Leafy greens. Picture a pan of freshly sautéed spinach, deep green leaves, lightly cooked with garlic and olive oil. It looks healthy, smells fresh, and feels like exactly the kind of meal that supports long-term wellness. You eat part of it for dinner and place the rest in a container for tomorrow's lunch. The next day you microwave it, stir it, and eat it without a second thought. But inside those leafy greens, a subtle transformation may have already started. Vegetables like spinach, kale, chard, and arugula naturally contain compounds called nitrates. In their natural form, nitrates are not harmful. In fact, they are present in many vegetables and are part of normal plant biology. The important change occurs after cooking and storage. When cooked vegetables sit for several hours, bacteria naturally present in the environment can begin converting nitrates into nitrites. This process happens slowly during storage, especially when food cools gradually. Nitrites themselves are not always dangerous, but when they are exposed to heat again, they can react with amino acids in food and form compounds known as nitrosamines. Nitrosamines are substances scientists study closely because of their ability to damage cellular DNA under certain conditions. For that reason, several health organizations classify some nitrosamines as potential carcinogens when exposure occurs repeatedly over long periods. What makes this important for pancreatic health is the way these compounds circulate in the body. After digestion, they enter the bloodstream and pass through organs responsible for metabolic processing and detoxification. The pancreas participates in many of these biochemical pathways. If exposure occurs occasionally, the body can usually manage it without difficulty, but repeated exposure combined with other stressors, oxidized fats, chronic inflammation, blood sugar fluctuations, creates a biological environment where cells must constantly defend themselves against chemical irritation. Think of it like repeatedly scratching the same small spot on your skin. One scratch heals easily, but repeated irritation slows healing and increases the chance of deeper damage. Reheating leafy greens repeatedly can increase the likelihood of nitrosamine formation, especially when the vegetables have been stored for extended periods. The easiest way to avoid this problem is simple. Eat cooked leafy greens fresh whenever possible. If leftovers remain, consider eating them cold in a salad, wrap, or grain bowl instead of reheating them. Cold cooked spinach still contains all of its nutrients without triggering the chemical reactions caused by additional heating. It is a small adjustment, but small adjustments repeated over years can make a meaningful difference. Now let's talk about a food that appears in kitchens all over the world, one that seems completely harmless and is reheated more often than almost anything else. Rice. Rice is one of the most widely consumed foods on the planet. It is inexpensive, versatile, and easy to cook in large batches. Many households prepare a pot of rice and store the rest for several days, reheating portions whenever they need a quick meal. But rice carries a hidden microbiological detail that most people never hear about. Raw rice often contains spores from a bacterium called Bacillus cereus. These spores are extremely resilient. Normal cooking temperatures kill the active bacteria, but the spores themselves can survive boiling water. While the rice remains hot, the spores stay dormant. But when the rice begins to cool, conditions change. If cooked rice sits at room temperature for too long, those spores can awaken and begin multiplying. As they grow, they may produce toxins that contaminate the food. One of these toxins is particularly concerning because it is heat stable. That means reheating the rice later may kill the bacteria, but it does not necessarily destroy the toxin already produced. So the microwave eliminates the living microbes, yet the toxin can remain. When people consume contaminated rice, the result is often a sudden case of food poisoning, nausea, vomiting, stomach cramps. But even smaller exposures that do not cause obvious illness can still trigger inflammatory responses in the digestive system. The gut and the pancreas are closely connected through what scientists call the gut-pancreas axis. Signals from inflammation in the digestive tract can influence pancreatic function through shared blood supply and immune pathways. Repeated irritation in the gut can therefore place indirect stress on the pancreas over time. This does not mean rice itself is dangerous. The risk lies in improper cooling and storage. Cooked rice should be cooled quickly and refrigerated within about an hour. Spreading it in a shallow container helps it cool faster, reducing the time bacteria have to multiply. Ideally, leftover rice should be eaten within 24 hours and reheated thoroughly until steaming hot. Once reheated, it should not be cooled and stored again. These simple steps dramatically reduce the chance that bacterial toxins will form. Now we move to another extremely common leftover, one that many people reheat quickly in the microwave without realizing the hidden issue involved. Chicken. Leftover chicken is one of the most common items people reheat for lunch the next day. A roasted chicken from dinner, grilled chicken breasts, or fried chicken pieces are placed in a container and stored in the refrigerator. The following day, they are placed on a plate and heated in the microwave for a couple of minutes. The outside feels hot, steam rises from the surface, everything seems perfectly safe. But microwaves heat food very differently from ovens. Instead of warming food gradually from the outside inward, microwave energy excites water molecules inside the food. Because different parts of a piece of chicken contain different amounts of water and fat, the heating process can be uneven. Some areas become extremely hot while other sections remain relatively cool. These cooler areas are known as cold spots. Cold spots can exist even when the outer surface of the food feels very hot, and those areas can remain within the temperature range where certain bacteria survive or multiply. Two bacteria commonly associated with poultry are Salmonella and Campylobacter. Proper initial cooking destroys them, but after cooking, chicken can become recontaminated through surfaces, utensils, or handling. If reheating fails to warm the entire piece of chicken evenly, bacteria in those cooler regions may survive. Most people think of food poisoning as a rare event, but mild exposures happen more frequently than many realize. Even when symptoms are not severe, the immune system still launches a response to eliminate the pathogens. That immune response creates inflammation throughout the digestive system. Once again, the pancreas is not isolated from this process. When the body fights infection or irritation in the gut, inflammatory signals travel through the bloodstream and immune pathways that affect pancreatic tissue. Repeated inflammatory stress over long periods can interfere with the pancreas's ability to regulate enzymes and hormones efficiently. The safest approach is to reheat chicken in a way that warms it evenly throughout. An oven set around 175 degrees Celsius, covered with foil to retain moisture, allows heat to penetrate gradually and eliminate cold spots. Cutting the chicken into smaller pieces before reheating also improves heat distribution. Alternatively, leftover chicken can be eaten cold in salads or wraps, eliminating the reheating issue entirely. Now we come to the final food on this list, one that combines two separate chemical effects when reheated improperly. Potatoes. Roasted potatoes are a favorite comfort food, crisp on the outside, soft on the inside. They often appear on dinner tables alongside meat or vegetables. Because they are easy to prepare in large trays, leftovers are extremely common. The next day, many people place them in a frying pan or microwave to bring back their crisp texture. But reheated potatoes involve two different processes that can influence metabolic stress in the body. The first involves a compound called acrylamide. Acrylamide forms when starchy foods are cooked at high temperatures through a reaction between sugars and amino acids. This is part of the same browning reaction that creates the golden crust people love on roasted or fried foods. When potatoes are cooked once and then refrigerated, their surface structure changes slightly. Moisture redistributes and certain sugars become more concentrated near the surface. If the potatoes are reheated at high heat, especially in a frying pan, those conditions can increase acrylamide formation compared to the original cooking. Acrylamide has been studied extensively because high exposures in laboratory settings have shown the ability to damage cells and DNA. For this reason, health organizations monitor its presence in foods cooked at very high temperatures. The second process involves something surprisingly beneficial that happens when potatoes cool. During cooling, some of the starch inside potatoes converts into resistant starch. Resistant starch is digested more slowly and supports beneficial gut bacteria. It also produces a gentler effect on blood sugar levels. However, when potatoes are reheated at high temperatures, much of that resistant starch converts back into rapidly digestible starch. That means the same potato that produced a moderate glucose response when cold can produce a faster spike when reheated. Each spike requires the pancreas to release insulin to regulate blood sugar. Occasional spikes are completely normal, but repeated sharp spikes, meal after meal for years, place additional workload on pancreatic beta cells. When the pancreas must repeatedly respond to sudden glucose surges, those cells experience greater metabolic strain. This is why many nutrition experts recommend enjoying leftover potatoes cold in dishes like potato salad or gently warmed rather than reheated at very high temperatures. It preserves resistant starch and reduces the conditions that promote excessive acrylamide formation. None of these foods are forbidden. Rice, potatoes, chicken, leafy greens, and fried foods are all common parts of human diets around the world. The key is understanding how time, storage, and reheating methods change the chemistry and microbiology of food. Your pancreas works quietly every day, regulating digestion and metabolism without asking for recognition. The small decisions you make in your kitchen, how you store food, how you reheat it, and how often you repeat certain habits, can either increase or reduce the long-term stress placed on this remarkable organ. Awareness alone can change those habits. And sometimes the most powerful step toward protecting your health is simply understanding what happens to food after the first time it leaves the stove.